How's everybody doing tonight? You see it? NYDFS. Shout out to Christopher Whitlock. Gonna join me a few minutes. It's a little late for him, but I feel him. Come check us out tomorrow on GRC Study Hall. Give me one in the chat if you can hear me. Oh, there he is. I appreciate you. Give me one in the appreciate you, Ty. Yeah, I'm just tired. I can't believe the year's almost over with, though. I guess that's what's tripping me out. I was like, wow, this year's flying by. Trying to make a few better moves, I guess. Trying to make a few better moves. If you got any questions, cybersecurity or tech, just put them in the box. We'll get to them. We will get to them. Oh, man. We will get to them. That was last week's. Yes, of course, somebody's texting me. Let's see. Nothing the liquid courage can't fix. Been up like 2 a.m. Yeah, I got up early, but I always try to get a nap in. I usually can't sleep, so I usually wake up around 4, study a little bit, then get back at it. Shout out to Jim R. Man, I got my response from the raw apply. Don't worry about it. Got to keep grinding. Sorry about that, though, man. I get rejected every week. What's up, people? That is true. I need to do a few more videos. It is a lot of nonsense out here. It is a lot of nonsense out here. Let's see. I'm trying to figure that out. I need to do the YouTube. That's man right there. It's gonna get better. That's what I keep saying. It's gonna get better. I'm just lucky to have a remote job. So let me see. About to get started here shortly. I'm trying to send a link to somebody. Oh, there it is. There I am. So, but it's all good. It is all good. Messenger. Let's see. I was facts. Yeah, we were talking about doing more labs or something to kind of help people with experience. But you need a job to get more experience. Oh, facts on that. So let's get going. We talked about this earlier too. Is with GDPR, CCPA now, New York's trying to outdo California, so they came out with their support privacy. I mean, I think me and Chris talked about this before. Is we should have one federal compliance for privacy and compliance and privacy, but we kind of don't. So which kind of sucks. But hey, we're just gonna keep grinding and more things we learn. Hopefully that'll help us, get employed. So once again, if you got any questions, tech or cybersecurity, put them in the box. Let's get rolling. Cause I need to go to bed. No, I'm just playing. No, I ain't playing. I need to go to bed. So here's the main slide. New York DFS is New York State Department of Financial Services. We know New York is the financial hub of kind of United States. So they said, let's outdo CCPA. Right. So cybersecurity regulations require New York insurance companies, banks, other regulated financial service institutions, agencies, and branches including non-U.S. banks licensed in the state of New York to access cybersecurity risk profile. The New York DFS Cybersecurity Regulations, that's the official number right there. Cybersecurity Regulations 23 NYCRR Part 500 in response to the growing sophistication of cybersecurity and increasing volatile cybersecurity climate in the climate facing United States financial institutions. Right. So we know banks, insurance companies. We know a lot of people are doing business in New York. So I guess New York wanted to, lock down their stuff. I think they should have just adopted CCPA, which really comes from GDPR. But everybody want to outdo everybody. So I try to warn former employees and clients banking about adopting CloudStrike and moving their critical financial systems from on-prem to Azure. Both got hammered by the CloudStrike debacle. That is true. That is true. Um, I don't even know what to say to that. I need to go ahead and do a rack of that. Root access calls. It's out there. But yeah, that was kind of debacle. Everybody's going to the cloud though. Cyber Olympic Security in the house. What's up, Calvin? Glad to see you. Thanks for joining. No, I would keep grinding. I don't think you cut out, man. I think it's just a bad time to be in cybersecurity and tech in general with all the layoffs. I think it's gonna in a year. I think it's gonna get back on the right side. People start hiring again. It's just kind of in this recession, especially in tech. GDR is fine, all but the U.S. still believes the empirical versus the metric. Now that's a good point. CCPA is real close to GDPR, but yeah, and it's I guess a lot of companies are trying to be national companies, so that's why they're on that GDPR bandwagon. Because a few of the big guys like Amazon, Walmart, they got stuff in Europe too. So, like you said, that makes it a nationwide privacy standard. I'm not a huge fan of it, but we talk about a little bit of it at work in one of my previous jobs. So that's what made it interesting. So a covered entity means any person operating under required to operate under a license, registration, charter, certificate, permit, accreditation, or similar authorization under banking law, insurance law, or financial services. Right. So that's really what New York DFS for any New York businesses, or you're bidding on any New York work, you have to apply to this regulations. Publicly available information means any information that a covered entity has reasonable basis to believe is lawfully made available to the general public from federal, state, or local government records, widely distributed to the media or disclosed. For the purpose of this subsection, covered entity has a reasonable basis to believe the information is lawfully made available. The information is the type available to the general public, and whether individual can direct information not be made available to a general public. If so, the individual has not done so. So, right, the covered entity is businesses or people that falls under this regulation. Once again, if you got any questions, IT or cyber, put them in the chat. Certain regulatory minimum standards have been set to assist organizations to prevent data breach. Minimum standards, we see data encryption, requirements that are adequately funded or overseen by a chief information security officer, which include third-party service providers. So they want an official VP or somebody that's over your cybersecurity program. Effective incident response plans that include preserving data in order to respond to data breaches. We know it's not if you're going to be breached, but when you're going to be breached. So what's your plan, right, for that? Accountability provided by identification and documentation of deficiencies, remediation programs, and certification of compliance on an annual basis. So I believe you're going to need to self-assess and send them your documentation yearly. Now, I don't know if they're going to look at it, but they're going to at least want it to have on file to make sure they're reviewing it, right? So make sure you're not negligent or they're not negligent. trying to protect the data flowing through New York and especially the financial industry. Until we were attacked by another planet, the world would not unite. No, that is true. That is true. Even on compliance, how does security differ between corporation, small business, besides money and resources? That's a good question. And I think money and resources, get you a maturity level and get you some of the best people or better products, right? Or like my man said, we thought CloudStrike and Azure was a better product too. So that's an interesting question. I think I would say people, but the money and the people are the resources. So that. With the Chevron thing passing in Scout, how would that affect FedRAMP? I need to think about that passing in Scout. I don't think it's gonna affect FedRAMP, to be honest. I think they might add a few more checks, but FedRAMP been around forever, and I actually like FedRAMP. I like the thought behind FedRAMP. I think StateRAMP is pretty good too. So to protect themselves. So let's keep rolling. I need to go ahead and hook up my second monitor. I am slacking today. So you got to have a cybersecurity program. That's the first thing. Each covered entity shall maintain a cybersecurity program designed to protect the CIA triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability of a covered entity. We talked about what that was. Cybersecurity program should be based on a covered entity risk assessment and designed to perform the following cybersecurity functions: identify, assess internal, external cybersecurity risks that may threaten the security, integrity of non-public information in a covered entity. Right. So when I did my research, it looks like a lot of companies were doing the basic. We talked about that. And I got videos on that. Shout out to Space Taco, the GRC Mafia in effect. So, but the cybersecurity program. Everybody know I'm a NIST 800-53. That's pretty heavy. That's pretty heavy. But the CSF was great for the security program. NIST 171, CIS. There's a lot of things you could do to qualify for a security program. Right. Shout out to my man Chris Whitlock. We go to the Trello board if we need to show some of the security families out there. But NIST CSF, NIST 171. Of course, I like to go big or go home, so I'm going NIST 800-53. Let the big dogs eat. CIS is another great one. So I would pick one of those as your security program, and you would be more than covered under the New York DFS. So the sad part about that is I like a video on 160. Space Taco, thought you were in Vegas. Are you in Vegas, Space Taco? But yeah, so once again, pick a relevant security program. The sad part about it is you would think a lot of financial institutions would have one. So for them to, and we're going to go through it and look at, which most of this is the standard 171. Security families they asking for, you would think a large multinational or even a small security firm would have a lot of these already. So that was a bit disheartening. So you see it, cybersecurity, each covered entity needs those. And the entity operations, those are especially from the NIST 800-53 and 171. These are just the security family. Information security, governance, asset inventory, access controls, business continuity, disaster recovery, system operations, system application development, physical security environment controls, customer data privacy. My favorite one, vendor and third-party service provider management and risk assessment, and the incident response. So those are just basic security families. Most of those should be covered in your security program, right? Nothing big, nothing. So that has me a little, I guess, perplexed. So I thought the big dot. I always err for 800-53 model baseline, easily map tailor controls, anything else standard. Yeah, that's Bob. Shout out to Jim. We on the same page with that one. That's kind of my favorite one because I figure out the model controls you cover for everything. You cover for CMC. You can usually get your hip and high trust with a few more controls. CMC. So you be covered for NY. Um, so like I said, most of those you'll be covered for. Now the first time doing it is a heavy lift. Oh no, Todd going FOMO. Aim. Yep. So, but those for me are just standard controls. Hope everybody enjoying the Olympics on TV. We need to have a cybersecurity Olympics. So we need to set one of those up. So let's keep rolling. Let me find my window. There it is. Oh, wrong window. So, who's in charge? You need a chief information security officer, or it could be VP of security. It can actually be the CIO through a small company. You just have to have the security role embedded in both of those. Each cover entity shall designate a qualified individual responsible for overseeing and implementing cover entity cybersecurity program, enforcing its cybersecurity policy. Chief Information Security Officer (CISO) may be employed by the cover entity, one of its affiliate, or you can have a third-party service provider, aka you can hire a virtual CISO to help you. The big deal in there that I thought jumped out to me is the CISO of each covered entity shall report in writing at least annually to the covered entity's board of directors or equivalent governing body. So now they telling you that you need to be going to the board of directors, and that needs to be a strategic direction of your companies, and your board of directors should oversee that. So I think that's a very poignant point. Let you know security we know is rising up to the board of directors, and even they're paying attention to all these tactics and things. It's like my man said, these nonsense happening in these cybersecurity streets. The cybersecurity program for the covered entity shall include monitoring, testing, developments in accordance with the covered entity's risk assessment designed to assess the effectiveness of your cybersecurity program. We shout out the tab we see right there. Then you need to have a monitoring testing should include continuous monitoring or periodic penetration testing and vulnerability assessment. Absent effective continuous monitoring or other system tests on an ongoing basis, changes in information system that may create or indicate vulnerabilities. So now, and that's really an 800-53 and all in this. You should have a annual penetration test and a vulnerability assessment. Usually, the penetration firm would just go ahead and do your vulnerability scanning and lump it all into one, and just give you a nice bill for that, right? So that's not unheard of. So mention 53 scale. Nah, facts. That is it, man. That there. I got an argument because when I was at the state of Indiana, we brought in 800-53, and it took us probably 3 months kind of to convince everybody. Shout out to my man Larry. Good evening. What's up, PBO and Team SC? Shout out to him. Thanks for joining. Facts. That's why we want to get you to be named to the board of directors, so you can go in and present when we're not successful. Nah, shout out to that. Not wishing ill on anybody. Not wishing ill. Hopefully everybody have a hack-free 2024 since it's almost over. Let's keep rolling. And out of trail. Cover entity shall maintain a system to extent applicable based on risk, design and reconstruct material financial transactions to include audit trail design and detect and respond to cybersecurity events. I highlighted the thing in red. Part one, you have to have 5 years of logs for that and shall maintain required by that. And the designated cyber events, probably log in, log off, all that good stuff. You got to keep those for 3 years. So your logs are going to be pretty big. But shout out to both Azure and AWS. Put your stuff in Glacier. It might take you a little while to get it back, but it's pennies on the dollar for disk space. So now that's a little more doable than it was in the old days. So shout out to Caesar, the LinkedIn. Is he here? I didn't see him in there. But shout out to the LinkedIn CISO, Caesar. He gave me an action item. I got it. Delays, man. Why do we have this if there's socks? Or they're not asking? There are, and I got a slide on the back of that delay. I think once again, I think the states are trying to outdo each other. I think New York's trying to outdo CCPA. I There were a little differences, but you're correct. Sarbanes-Oxley is definitely it's been around forever for financial institutions. I think what New York is trying to do is trying to say they're going to become more modern and aka more secure than SOX, aka Sarbanes-Oxley. That's probably one of the other videos I need to add to my compliance. I got everything in there, I think, but the Sarbanes-Oxley size SOX in there. But I'm like you, delays. I mean, if you're doing Sarbanes-Oxley, just looking through there, I didn't really see many things different. I think Sarbanes-Oxley leans a little more privacy and financial. I think New York DFS, and we're going through it, they hit the cybersecurity program hard. But my thing is just tell people to pick one. I didn't think you need a whole New York DFS privacy out of New York when you could have just did Sarbanes-Oxley with NIST 171 or CIS for security programs or NIST CSF. So I agree with you on that one. I think it's overkill. But once again, the states, they can make you comply because if you're doing any business in New York, shut up, Bit Native. If you're doing any business in New York, you have to comply. So that's a good point. The product control matrix, pivot on file, but show controls mapped in this CSF. No, that's true. That's no, I like that. I like that. And I hate this. What we used to call it harmonizing. So, like you said, we do NIST 800-53. And if you look in the back in the appendix, they usually have mappings to HIPAA. We were looking at them for CGIS, which is the FBI. And like you said, PCIDS, you can map to NIST. So, yeah, we call that harmonizing, but you're correct on that. You're welcome, delays, man. So yeah, I probably need to do a socks video on there. Where's my pen? Chris be sending me a video every week. I need to do. I'll be behind, but let's keep rolling. We'll keep it short today, so we can get to hump day. Risk assessment. Each covered entity should conduct a periodic risk assessment. The covered entities' information systems to inform and design of the security program as required by this part. Such risk assessments shall be updated reasonably necessary to address change. We try to do them every year. At least check the box. If nothing changes, it says nothing changed and keep it moving. The risk assessment shall be carried out according with written policies and procedures and shall be documented by such policies and procedures. But that's the big deal, especially since the Casillas hack and all the big hackers, you got to kind of do a risk assessment. So, but shout out to that. But did we fail? Because we just had this CrowdStrike come out to take everybody out, right? So did everybody do their risk assessment on CrowdStrike? Third-party service provider policy. Covered entities shall implement written policies and procedure for design and security information system, non-public information that are accessible to third parties. So, AKA Azure will be a third party. Did you do your risk assessment on third party? Did you do the risk assessment on the services you're using in your third party? Right, identification and risk assessment of third party. Minimum cybersecurity practices are required. Due diligence process used to evaluate the adequacy of cybersecurity practices, such as third-party service providers. So, did people do their due diligence with CrowdStrike and Azure? That is the question. I think so. It's just kind of hard. Don't be putting pressure on me, Chris. So he was like, "Well, we're gonna do the postmortem." Yeah, we did a good one with Snowflake. So I think that one went well. So I think you're probably right. We need to do another one with CrowdStrike. And just kind of walk through it. Shout out to CrowdStrike. So hopefully they're getting better. They're doing a postmortem and putting their but two, I think for a lot of people, um, which is hard to do though, is do you have a test area for updates for CloudStrike and different stuff? Or you just obviously you just rolling it out to production systems, which is quite common. Right. So a lot of stuff we try to roll out to a test area, let it percolate for a couple weeks before we roll out into production. But you could be missing out on a high vulnerability security patch too, right? So you got to balance that. So I think that's the question. So let's keep rolling. I don't have many slides in this new CCPA, aka New York DFS, trying to work for the financial systems of New York to make. And we know MFA's not the silver bullet, but it's definitely a high control. You need to be in there. It'll take out a lot of your script kiddies and your mid-level hackers. So, based on your risk assessment, your covered entity, use effective controls, which may include multi-factor authentication and risk-based authentication, shall be utilized for any individual accessing the covered entity's internal network from an external network, unless the covered entity CISO has approved in writing the use of reasonable equivalent or more secure access controls. I'm trying to figure out what would that be, right? So, um, I guess you could say VPN will be in that control, but even in your VPN, people will be snatching sessions in VPN. So I would want to do VPN with the MFA. So I don't know what that what the I don't know what the CISO would give you approval of, unless it was an old system that was deprecated that y'all haven't got on, right? So that would be more of a a risk acceptance for that particular thing, and hopefully with a poem when you're going to get off of that. So that's what I would expect to see from that. Encryption of non-public information. So we're just going to touch on this once again. Risk assessment. You know what your NPI is, which is your non-public information. I hate that term, but it's getting popular. We know encryption. Hopefully AES 256, at least 512. You know, once again, if you have an alternate compensated control, you got to get your CISO to sign off on that. I don't know what that would be, what that compensated control would be for encryption. Um, and I don't think they named the level of your encryption in there. So that's why, once again, that's why I'm a NIST guy. It tells you AES usually 128 or higher. We know incident response plan. I probably got 4 incident response videos. So we know you need incident response plan, internal process, the goals of your incident response plan, the definition and clear roles and responsibilities of those plans, external and external communications. So who are you talking to internally? That'd be legal, right? Depending if your whole database is stolen, you need to wake up your CIO, your board of directors. It could affect your stock price. Shout out Equifax, their stock price got cut in half. All right. And 2, externally, if once again, people know I used to do work for the IRS. So if the state got hacked, we had to let the IRS know. Depending on where your clients are, each state usually has their if 500 more constituents for certain states get hacked, externally, you got to let them know. All right. So I think Indiana's 500. I think Chicago's 500. I think New York was 500. So if you got 500 customers in there, and if you don't let them know and they find out their citizens or constituents in there, you will get a big fine, right? So you want to make sure you tighten that up and get your reporting down. Documentation and reporting regarding cybersecurity events, related events. The evaluation and revision of the incident response plan following an event. Shout out to Chris. That's why he's talking about doing a post-mortem of a CrowdStrike so we can tighten up our incident response plan, right? So we try to get better from other people's misery. No, that's not funny. But no, you should do a post-mortem on your own, then a post-mortem when other people get hacked to figure out if that happened to you, did you have controls or compensated controls would stop you from getting hacked? So we went over Snowflake, right? They weren't using MFA, and it was quite big in their document to use MFA. So theoretically, if you were doing MFA, if you were, they were letting people connect to their database straight from the internet. Right? We made it go through their Azure cloud or their AWS cloud. Then if it went through the cloud, you could check where the IP was coming. You could whitelist some of those IPs if they're current customers, and that's the only way they could get to it. So there's a lot of things you can do when you force people to go through your cloud subscription, right? Once again, everybody know I'm an AWS guy, so you can check the IPs. AWS has a ton of services to help you. And if you use AWS WAF, it could check, once again, denial of service, check to make sure those IPs are good IPs. It has a list of bad and questionable IPs and sites. So a lot of those services, once again, you can check and hopefully make sure you're doing the right thing. Shout out to Christopher Young for joining us. Make the world, I appreciate that. Shout out to my man doing big things out there on his grind too. Let's keep going. Almost done. We just talking about the notice. Big deal there is each covered entity shall notify the superintendent as promptly as possible in the event no later than 72 hours from a determination that a cybersecurity event has happened. An event has occurred that is either of the following: a cybersecurity event impacts the covered entity, of which a notice is required to provide to any government body, self-regulatory agency, or any supervisory board. So since I do work for IRS, if I notified the IRS and we had New York customers in there, constituency or citizens, they saying you need to let New York know because you let the IRS know. Right? Cybersecurity events that are reasonably likelihood of material harm and any material part of the normal operations of the covered entity. Annually, each covered entity shall submit a superintendent a written statement covering the prior calendar year. This shall be submitted by February 15 in such a form set forth by Appendix A. I should have put that in there. I was lazy. Certifying that the compliance within set forth in this part. So the two things, though, is you need to get with your legal, and I always hate this term, what's a material, right? Likelihood of material harm in any material part of a normal operation, right? Is that 1,000 users? Is that more than $1 million? So what is material? So that's where cybersecurity works with legal, right? So I don't like to guess on material. There's some legal verbiage on what material is. So that lets you know lawyers wrote this part. So I will get with legal and figure out what material is. But the problem is most states have, if you have 500 or 1,000 records or people in that state get hacked, you would have to notify them. And with number one, you would have to notify New York DFS. So just so you can get a handle on your reporting requirements, because that's usually how you get fined when you miss your reporting requirements. Let's see what my man said. I haven't dealt with him, but I find it seems very. Oh, I agree with that. I'll probably do FFIEC for that, and maybe some. That's true. I think it's close to Sarbanes-Oxley too, so it has an overlap. Once again, I think New York's trying to outdo CCPA, which is California. I think it's an overlap of CCPA, of FIEC, and of SOX, which is Sarbanes-Oxley. So I agree with you 100% on that. Once again, I think New York's trying to outdo California. A lot of times, attorney generals like to get their name in the paper, so I think that's what it is more than anything. So my 2 cents on that. Once again, I didn't want to go through all of those, but once again, audit trails, notice, reporting, exemptions, and we're gonna hit the exemption and insurance. Insurance rules classify companies regulated under the insurance law of New York. So insurance companies have to be in there. So you will see this a lot. People bidding on work, or if you're doing business with an insurance company, or you want to work for an insurance company, this is something you would definitely have to be comfortable with and definitely probably come up from a cybersecurity program. And these some of the other services that included in there: licensed lenders, state charter banks, trust companies, service contract providers, private bankers. A lot of private banks are people, so that's interesting right there. Mortgage companies, insurance companies doing business in New York, and non-U.S. banks licensed to operate in New York. So that's where banking has a lot of connotations with it. So once again, I would get with the legal stuff. I might reach out to one of my legal homies and ask him what's the definition of a private banker in this context. Once again, there are exemptions. They didn't want to hit everybody. So if you have fewer than 10 employees, if you have less than 5 million in gross annual revenue for 3 years, or less than 10 million in year-end total assets, right, you would be exempt from this. Because we know if you're trying to do NIST or CIS, this is going to cost you some money. So I guess they're trying to be it. So once again, there's the overlap between what my man just said, FFIEC, GLIBA, and the New York and NYDFS. As you see, there's overlap on a lot of those, especially from the cybersecurity program piece right there, all the 500 requirements. This you see the GLIBA cybersecurity program policies overlap. Both of them has penetration tests. GLIBA didn't have an audit trail. GLIBA didn't have multi-factor authentication. Limitation of data retention is blank in both. So data retention is once you're done with our data, you need to delete it, or if you're not doing some kind of calculation, once you're done with it and it gets rolled up and monetized, demonetized, so you can figure out it is. Hopefully, you can delete it, right? And notice to superintendent is both blank and GLIBA and FIC. So, like we talked about, there's a ton of overlap. I need to find overlap for SOX in there, but I believe GLIBA and SOX is super close too. So, once again, I think it's New York trying to outdo Cali on that overlap right there. So. Let's keep going. Once again, some more overlap, and we see right there in the NYDFS, that's the security families, and like my man said, all of these definitely 800-53. I think CSF covered most of these, and I think CIS covered most of those. Right, and that's the GLIBA. You shall develop, implement, maintain a comprehensive information security program that is written in one or more readily accessible parts containing administration, technical, and physical safeguards. The FFIEC, information security standard and procedure, define institutional control environments through government structure and provide description required, expected, and prohibited. All right, so they just really named those particular security families, and GLIBA and FIC said you just need them. Right, so once again, a lot of overlap, a lot of overkill. And two is this is the AWS config and also AWS audit from AWS. They actually have config. You can scan your environment. So I just took a couple controls, like the 502 security program. Each covered entity should maintain a security program. So we talked about their certificate expiration checks. Once again, your X509, ACM, we want to make sure for our encryption, cybersecurity program, confidential integrity. If you have your load balancer, making sure you redirect your HTTP to HTTPS. We want all our load balancer traffic encrypted. So if somebody tries to come in on clear text, we're going to force them to be encrypted. That's 500-0208. Once again, cybersecurity program. The gateway stage cache, we want to make sure it's encrypted. Cloud trail, we were talking about your auditing trail, because sensitive data may exist to help protect data at rest. Ensure encryption is enabled in your cloud trail, and you got to have an auditing trail for that. And that's the second one. Protect sensitive data at rest. Ensure encryption is able for your Amazon CloudWatch log files. And a part of that we just looked at, you need to have logging on for auditing. Especially remember, I think one we had to keep 5 years, and the other one we had to keep 3. So we definitely would get our Cloud Trail and Cloud Watch, getting those APIs logged and getting developers to log those transactions inside Cloud Watch. And hopefully we're going to send them to the big dog Splunk, right? So we can get our SIM stuff on and make sure we're doing the proper things here. Those are the controls. And we know AWS has a slew of controls to make sure we're compliant. So I'm going to drop the link if anybody want to come up. Just want to do something, trying to hit the compliances. I'm definitely going to get back on my NIST and my AWS. So just want to cover some, I think, some of the most relevant compliances, I think, that are going to be needed, and you could put on your resume that you have some understanding of those. I think this will be one of them, even though it's an overlap of SOX and GLBA. We saw that slide. So once again, New York DFS. I think CCPA, I would learn and study before I do New York DFS, to be honest on that. Once again, your NIST, your CIS, you see that your security families, your controls, your compensated controls, just getting those tailored for your environment. Shout out to MFA. We know that's going to be it. Let's see. Then cloud post-mortem plan event test runners ordered by their owners. Same folks want all the system data in the cloud using their digital fake currency. Sadly, 100% true. Facts. I'm happily listening to support outside war here, Professor BlackOps. Appreciate that. But yeah, once again, I think we're and a couple people said that. Who said delay made? I think we're overlapping now. I think we have too many privacy, too many compliance, too many cybersecurity programs. I think we should pick a couple and roll with them, but I think people are trying to get better, trying to make things for certain industries. A lot of industries are far behind in cybersecurity. I think because we talk about it a lot, we're in the industry. I think we think a lot of companies are there, and we see every month companies are getting hacked that aren't there. Some very big companies, I guess, which is kind of surprising to that. So yeah, I hope everybody's having a nice 2024. Like I said, I just think tech's kind of in a little downswing, kind of recessionist with all the big companies laying off ton of people, right? I think they overhired. I think they were trying to stockpile engineers. So when you lay off that crazy, I appreciate that, Jim. So I think when you to see that your layoff being that big, it's just a crazy amount. Shout out to that government job. Are you talking about Fed jobs or state jobs, Space Taco? Or either or both? Because I think they're a little different. Fed jobs, and I let Jim chime in. I usually go study your NIST type work. A lot of Fed jobs do your NIST. If you're doing state, I would do CIS and kind of, once again, your IRS Pub 1075, your CGIS, and your state agencies have certain security requirements. So I tell people for the state, I focus on Department of Revenue, your big dogs. Health and Hospital have one. MARZ would be your Social Security office. CGIS would be your state police that rolls up to the FBI. So I kind of, what you would do for Fed would be a little different than what you would do for the state. Just in my humble opinion. So I tell people try to get that state work. Once again, do IRS Pub 1075, CGIS for state police, HIPAA and High Trust for health and hospital, and MARZ would be the Social Security office. So that's kind of okay. Yep, IPS and CASO work. I always forget about those. ITIL is in there. Yep, HIPAA. Yep, facts. I've been trying to do a little more high trust on there because for the certification. You all over it. Shout out to Space Taco. Go check her out on Discord, doing some big things. I've been in her Discord, so go check it out. I've been in everybody's Discord, but no, shout out to Space Taco. I need to give me a little niche spot in her Discord and start publishing a few things. Once again, put your questions in there. I'll hang out a little longer. PBO's winding down, trying to make that hump day tomorrow. Salute to Before the Billions. Shout out to him. Definitely check him out. Just talking about NYDFS, which is the New York privacy compliance that's kind of getting a little, picking up a little steam in the financial industry. We looked at AWS; they had their checks for it to make sure when you lock down your. That's what we're going to start doing. Looking at architecture in AWS and what does that look like from a NIST perspective, both 800 and CSF. What does that look like from a privacy perspective? Probably CCPA and maybe New York DFS and maybe GDPR. How do you make sure your environment's in there? Not that you set them up because we know this is GRC. So, but when people set up those architectures, how do you go through and make sure those are compliant with the certain compliance that your company's using? HIPAA, high trust, sieges, IRS Pub 1075. Shout out to NIST 800-53. How do you go by and make sure that those are? I just put you on blast on my Discord, people. Now, shout out to I'm definitely your Discord. Shout out to Casual Economist. Glad you can join me. I'll drop the link one more time and see if anybody want to come up. Something short, just doing a compliance. So once again, a couple people asked me about those New York DFS, so I had to kind of dig into it. I've been kind of seeing it, but once again, close to GLBA, close to SOX, close to CCPA. We had the slide. We'll show the overlapping slide one more time. So once again, big overlap. I need to find a slide that overlaps it with SOX though. But so that's the overlap slide between New York DFS, New York CCR 500 with the GLBA and the FFIEC. So I don't know. I think we got too many compliances. We need to work on getting good. Let's see. I got back home from workshop. I can ask a few questions, people. You can, if you want, you can ask them down there. You can come up, either one. Hopefully, you had a good workshop. But yeah, once again, I think from a GRC perspective, you don't have to know every compliance, but I think you need to pick one. CCPA, New York, GDPR. Oh, what's up, GMR? Glad you can join me.
Hey, what's going on? How you doing tonight?
Running out of steam, but I can't complain. How you doing?
Oh, me too. Yeah, it's like one of those days where I need a cup of coffee in the evening, but I wanna sleep at night.
Yeah, because I gotta be up early. I've been trying to go to a gym and get in shape like before the billions because he young with hair, man. So I've been going on my Planet Fitness. So, so what's your thoughts on the NYDFS, GMR? What's your thoughts on that?
Hey, just another thing, it's like me. It's funny, people who grew up I think we had this talk earlier, but financial institutions, they're really good on security controls, and
Mhm.
others you got to really fight for it. It's like with financial, if I throw out 853, they're not too bad with it. But if I throw it out, to the HIPAA high trust people or some of these other industries, they start freaking out about it. And to me, it's like you can map all of this stuff, right? And to me, the easiest thing is to just go in and say, hey, we're going to shoot for 853 moderate. It's easy, to create it pivots and maps to everything. So
Mhm.
that's kind of the baseline I work with. And then, it's like when I'm creating these controls, it's kind of like, okay, well, we just won't call it this. We'll just call it, like, I said, enterprise control
Yeah.
matrix or common controls or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of line it up and you show how everything maps, whether you have the tools for you can just bust it out in a spreadsheet. Everyone's pretty happy. So it's sometimes it's a matter of telling management what they want to hear and not Not something that's going to scare the heck out of them. So,
I might take that. To be honest, I never thought about that. I usually just tell them it's this and hit them over the head with a bat. We doing it. So I like that enterprise
oh,
controls because after a while, I explain to them after a month or so they understand. It's just a control. Don't
yeah,
get over it. It's just a control to protect.
yeah.
I wouldn't get over anxious with it, but the NIST kind of scares people, especially.
It does. I just say, hey, what's our regulatory framework and our compliance? Because you got, oh, you PCI DSS or your HIPAA high trust, whatever you have, right? Whatever state regulations. So you just kind of map it out. You say, okay, well, well, let's create an enterprise control framework, and you show everything maps out and how it relates to, everything. And then you don't tell them, right? Then it's oh, look at this. So by the way, we're 2701001 001 and
Yeah.
853, and if we ever become involved with be a DoD supplier, we map out 171 and all that good stuff. So
No, that's a good way. I might use that now. Now I like kind of how, like you said, that it's an enterprise, and like you
yeah.
said, it's just really control and it's enterprise control, and kind of how you word it, and like you said, you gotta be careful how you roll stuff to
Oh,
management. So
well, and you get some of these GRC tools, unless you're going to roll out like big bucks for, like
Archer, we rolled out Archer. And
Archer.
it was a pain in
Yeah.
the.
Well, tools like that, they're really great, but it's like, okay, you need like a 2-year learning curve and a master's degree in Archer, So, most people don't have all day to be spending in Archer. They're going to be, spend like, 30, 40 minutes, a few days on it, dealing with with whatever works in their queue, etc. So, but a lot of smaller companies, they don't have that kind of money, so they buy another tool, and then it's like, well, what framework do you want? Do you want this? And then by the time you start adding up all of these things, it's like you've got 100 scoops of ice cream, and you're paying for all of this stuff, and it's just, hey, just give me 853, right? Or and we can go from, and then everything just falls in line from there.
No, I agree with that. Let me get my young man in there. What was your workshop today? Before the billions, what was the workshop on?
Yeah, actually, this is the question I had.
Yeah.
The name of the workshop was through a company called Refactor Tech.
Mm-hmm.
The name of it was titled "Building an LLM RAG Pipeline."
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I'm familiar with RAG. I'm familiar with LLMs, and I'm familiar with building up pipelines.
Mm-hmm.
This was a completely different thing. They went into the whole architecture of RAG, large language models. They went into all the. It was more like specifically data science, and I was like, okay, this is kind of really into the minutia of things, really into the weeds. And the presenter, you could tell they were a subject matter expert. And they work at Microsoft, and they, work with a lot of their tools, and they exposed me to other tools. And this is the question that's going to ask related to it is, what is your viewpoint of companies using LLMs like OpenAI's ChatGPT or Claude, or what is it? Llama, I think was another one.
Yeah. I'll let Jim chime in after I chime in.
Mhm.
It give me heartburn, but I think it's the future, so I got to get ready for it. So, from a policy perspective, is what data should you put in it, right? Then two is you can have DLP, so hopefully I won't let certain data elements get out. But I think the funny thing is I'm going to a AWS LLM talking about the same thing. So I'm actually trying to get my head around that particular question. It's funny you mentioned that. So, but no, I think it's the future. I think the pipeline. I actually went to an AWS presentation. They were using it for. I'm trying to word this right. If you were having kind of a mental breakdown, their app will look at your facial features, check your voice out to figure out if you were going to delete yourself and send out a 911. So all of that was AI. So we were talking about from a cybersecurity perspective and privacy perspective, how do you take somebody's voice, put tokens on it so they can hack it? How do you encrypt it? But he's using language models, and he was talking about using something in the camera to check your temperature to to see if you were actually getting hot. You were getting super agitated. So the speed of your voice and kind of taking your temperature and some other things. So, and he was using a AI model to kind of figure that out because he was a psychologist that became a data scientist. So he had all those points to figure out if you just need to see somebody or if you were having an episode. So he was using AI. So we were trying to figure out what's the best way from a compliance and security perspective to lock down that data, make sure that that data's being kept or deleted at the right spot. Then from a legal perspective, what's your thing is if you fail to do something and that person hurt himself, are you legally liable for that, right? So those are all the things we were touching on that. So it's funny. I'm looking at a video to kind of dig into that more, to be honest with you, before the video, because I think that's the future. And once again, is technology usually beats security. So I think they're in front of security, and we're trying to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So long story short, to answer your question, I think is the future. I think we got to get our heads around it because people are making money with it. So you can't tell a business no. So you're going to have to figure out. AWS had a lot of services to help you secure it, help you lock it down. We were talking about taking your voice print and putting tokens on it. And once again, standard TLS, lock it down. But the learning modules, because if you get too much bad data and somebody specifically pollute your model and you're using it to learn, right? How do you stop that if you think somebody's potentially polluting your model for a gain or to make you look bad, right? So that's in there. So
they actually did talk about like fine tuning like the models and stuff, and they were just saying essentially just give it more data, right? They were like give it more data, and then they were discussing issues with either overfitting or underfitting your model because your model can hallucinate and say the wrong things.
Right. I call it poisoning, but they were calling it hallucinate. From a security perspective, we call it poisoning, but like you said, it's so we call it guardrails. Are you putting guardrails around it so you couldn't overshoot one way or the other?
And that's what RAG is for. Like the what is it? So essentially, it's like if you had documents, whether it's whatever types of data, it can be like a text file, it can be unstructured, structured data, or it can be generated data from an LLM that you put into the LLM, and then it processes those documents to help you give a more refined search or retrieval, I think is what they call it, because they explained that there's a difference between querying and retrieval, which I thought was the same thing, but it's a totally different thing.
Yeah, you getting really into that way, but nah, you right. But when you're a subject matter expert and you at that level, right? Those are the things you talk about, right? So,
retrieval augmented generation. That's what it stands for. That's what RAG is.
So it's funny you mentioned that. So yeah, like I said, I went to AWS and they were talking about that, and I was talking to a guy from compliance. So he actually had his architecture up there. So I was going to actually pull down his architecture and kind of walk through it to see what I thought from a security perspective from those AI machine learning and locking those down. Because I put this, everybody know I'm an AWS fanboy, and that's my thing. So I think I'm going to study for this cert once I get to CISP. They actually just brought out a machine learning, especially from AWS, to get familiar with their services and their tools. So I think that's something I'm a little light on that I need to dig into it. So.
Hey, PBO, what AWS certs do you have?
I have the practitioner, I have the associate architect, I got the associate developer, and I got the security specialty. I missed the SysOp by 5 points.
Gotcha.
They had 3, which there's different. They had 3 hands-on assignments you have to do for AWS SysOp. I got 2, and the third one I could not get. I was pissed off. I knew how to do it, but for some reason I couldn't get my access control right. I tried to cheat. I tried to get myself root so I could at least get half of it. It wouldn't let me do it. I was like, so I missed it by 5 points. I'm a little salty about that. So those are the 4 I got. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, I was about to say, man, I need to get into AWS because not only because I tried to get the Google cert, and then I was like, okay, well, it doesn't really mean anything right now because everybody's going towards AWS, or everybody uses AWS
Or
mostly.
Azure. Those two, pick
Azure.
one.
Right.
Azure, AWS. You got to pick one. But yeah.
Yeah, because I had a few recruiters say, "Oh yeah, you have experience with Google Cloud. Sounds great, but where's your experience in Azure or AWS?"
You got to get one of those, man. So either one. Yeah, you got to pick one of those, man.
Right.
Yeah, I think we had this discussion a few weeks ago. It's like, everyone, we had so many people on the infrastructure side, and then cloud, it's like had a Azure cloud and some AWS for some development, and the infrastructure network folks were just like, hey, bring in some contractors. And I'm like, dude, you can only do that so long, but then people are going to say, well, why do we need you? Right.
Yeah.
So we were on a real push for that. Hey, to get your cloud certifications or your cloud skill, and to get our infrastructure people involved with it. So it was a painful process. But once it's like, hey, you got someone you're paying here, who's on payroll, and yet you're going to be rolling $350 an hour support dollars for these companies. So then the lights went on, and they said, yeah, we can save a lot of money that way. But for my edification, just cybersecurity, it's like, yeah, I kind of did it, but I was always the controls guy, right? Or to make sure things are done and tell people to do it. And then I'd kind of do some shoulder surfing, or else I'd get into like the Azure purview, or look around, make sure settings were done. I didn't do the hands-on. So back in February, I did the ISC Square CCSP exam. So I passed that. So I said, I got to do it myself. I got to get my cloud certifications.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, there was the Cloud Plus. They were doing a beta, and then in February, and the next day I took that, and I said, well, if I'm going to study for one, might as well study for the other. Well, the CCSP is more like you're kind of like the cloud solutions, architect guy. This the Cloud Plus was more like, hey, you're the guy spinning up cloud services, configuring them, and supporting the DevOps teams. So it's a little bit more of a hands-on focus. And I took that exam 6 months ago, and just today I got an email saying, oh, you passed, because you're part of the beta program. So it only costs $50 for the test, which I love, and so I did that. But I recently did my Microsoft Azure Fundamentals, the AZ900, couple weeks ago. So I've got that. That was pretty simple. But I work in Azure. I haven't really done much in AWS because we've kind of been migrating off of it, moving to our Azure, the Azure DevOps environments. But lately, people have been calling me, hey, you need some people in, Azure AWS experience. And I've got my little book over here. I don't know if you can see it, my little Azure Architects. It's probably backwards.
Yeah,
so I got to read that. And, I get you create your little AWS environment, and you can play and enable services. But yeah, I got burnt in Azure doing that, because it's like, oh, spin up all these virtual services and VPCs and everything, and then you forget to shut them off. And hey, I'm getting billed for this crap.
Well, in AWS, you can set up a billing email. So I check my email every day. If I'm over $50 a day, it's gonna email me. So most of the labs I do was under $10. Even when I was using database, I usually build them in a couple hours and just shut them down.
You do this with your own personal account, or
personal account, because I had it more than a year. You get your first year free over a year. I could probably use a different account, but it's not a big deal. Like I said, it's not like I'm spending a crazy amount of money.
The only reason I bring that up is because when I'm trying to learn about like Google Cloud, because I was trying to get the certification for it, and they give you free credits if you sign up for, like, they have a program called the Innovators program, Google Cloud Innovators, and they give you, I think it's like 35 credits for the month, which can get you like a whole bunch of different tools that they have, different workshops and different courses. But
AWS and Azure ain't gonna do that. They don't. I think Google trying to grow their stuff, so I think they do that to get people in. AWS and Azure is like, hey, we the 800-pound gorilla. But the real reason I start doing it is I'll start doing reviewing vendors and stuff, doing third-party assessments to people coming in the state, and everybody was in the cloud, so I was struggling doing them a little bit because I'm like, okay, what's this service? What's that service? So I start getting searched, so I feel more comfortable doing third-party assessments in the cloud. That's one reason I start doing. And two is I'm thinking about switching from GRC to engineering again. So I might become site reliability engineer, like Jim says, start doing hands-on. Till I start getting calls about production in the middle of the night, I'll probably change my mind. But
oh man, after you and Tam told me about site reliability engineering, I made a post about it, and then this guy commented on my post on LinkedIn. He said, "Oh, SRE and DevOps is more dog eat dog than data engineering."
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what exactly that means about.
I can tell you because data engineering, your pipeline might go down, right? Your part go down. If the site goes down, everything's go down. So usually when you call a site reliability engineer, something's wrong with the whole site. When a pipeline is done, or if something's not calculated, they call you. But if the site's messed up, you calling them. So I think that's what they're meaning. Because I used to be on infrastructure and as a DBA. So I'd be like, database up, it's the site, it ain't me. So when that's go down, you gotta give the infrastructure, be like, oh no, it's the whole load balancer. Call the SRE guy. So it's like the programmer calls you like, it's not the pipeline, it's the database. The database said it's not me, it's infrastructure. Infrastructure like the whole site down, right? So it starts rolling downhill. And if you at the bottom and the whole site down, that's doggy dog. Somebody getting fired usually. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. Yeah, because he was saying it's really competitive as a role as well. So I was like, yeah, that's what I'm planning on getting into. So I just wanted to
it is because if the whole site's down, right, your company's out. Each part is important, but once the site reliability that's your job to keep the whole site up, right? So that if that goes down, it's a huge issue. So I think I used to work with a guy. I might see if I can interview him. I think he does SRE work. I say that and I think about it, man. Do I want to get caught? The cool thing though now is with Azure and AWS, with the load balancers and DNS and Route 53, you can roll over from one to the east and west coast without touching a button. You can check the health, and if it's bad, you can just roll over to Chicago or Cali or Seattle, and you can do all that without touching everything if you have your stuff set up properly too. So
yeah, everything's like redundant and has disaster recovery.
The problem is, and I learned as a DBA a lot of time is, and this too, is the programming can mess something up and make the database mess up. And they think it's me until I figure out your query was wrong, or you didn't have an index, or you were doing something, so you gotta. And so being the site, everybody's gonna blame everything on the site. Even if I mess up on the DBA, I'm be like, oh, I think something was wrong with the site. It didn't roll over right. So, so that's the part everybody pointing fingers.
Yeah, I can understand that. So and see, that's the thing. I was wondering if it's like, oh yeah, we really need site reliability engineers. Like, it's a lower barrier to entry to get into, or if it's a higher barrier to entry, but it's harder to get rid of you.
For SRE?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. If
higher, because
higher barrier to entry to get in. But then a lower chance for you to get like let go. Or...
Yep. Because number one, I don't think you. And I'm gonna interview one. I know one. You're not gonna have a lot of them. But number two, the barrier is so high is because when we interview them, you got to know everything. Not everything, but you got to be comfortable with a lot of stuff, right? You got to be with load balancers, Route 53. You got to be cool with the infrastructure. DR, you got to understand a part of DR. You got to be able to roll over. Are you using site-to-site databases? Are you syncing them? So you got to have an understanding of a little bit of everything. You got to be kind of deep in those. because when you fail over, you got to make sure, the database is going to fail over. You got to make sure your load balancers are set up. So, and two is, depending on what technology is using in the stack, you got to be comfortable with that as an SRE too. Chime in on that, Jim. You shaking? What's your thoughts on that? So I think it's higher.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm sitting here looking at some other stuff I'm
No,
going
you're
to
fine. You're fine.
do.
You're fine. You're fine.
But yeah, oh, what you were saying, it's I did operations for many, many years, running SOCs and whatnot, and it's like people will ask me, "What's the best job you ever had in cybersecurity?" And I'll say it was running cybersecurity operations. And then they'll say, "What's the worst?" And I say, "Same damn job." Those 2 o'clock calls, about a spillage, and oh crap, and then when something happens, then it's like, man, I really hate my job.
Oh my God. And half the time it'd be developers. So that's why a lot of people think I'm old, but I say, well, to be a good DBA, a lot of times you got to be a developer, because a lot of times the developer is going to cause your database to have issues. Being they're not loading it right, they don't have an index right, they got some funky query, they trying to do analytics and they don't know how to do it right. They go blame the database. So it's like, dude, what are you doing? Your query's messed up. You don't know how to do trace inside your query to make sure your query optimized, right? You don't know how to do a pivot table. So a lot of that stuff. So that's why I tell a lot of people, you need to do the job that's gonna be your customers in the future. Like I developed for 10 years before I was a DBA. Then before I came a web admin or app, I was a DBA and did back-end programming. So a lot of times too, when your web server goes down and have a problem, it's because the database is taking too much resources, or the programmer's got a runaway query that's taking too much on the app server and the web server and the database, right? So you need to be able to look up those metrics and kind of take. The cool thing though now is with Oracle and Azure, their dashboards give you a lot of hints now. Like, oh, this query we can say it doesn't have an index and it's not properly formed, and that's causing you a hot spot on your database. In the old days, you had to figure out that the hard way. You had to run these queries. Now they give you a cool dashboard and kind of help you out.
Well, you worked on as I recall, you were a developer programmer at one time, right?
For 10 years.
Probably like old COBOL and Fortran and stuff like that.
I did mainframe for 3 years.
Yep.
And I went to Oracle. Oracle had forms and reports. Then Oracle went to Java, and I did back-end work for PL SQL. Then before data engineering was data warehouse. So I used to do data warehousing for DoD, moving a billion rows in 6 hours. But you only have one web server and one database to do it with. I couldn't spin up multiple VMs like you can now. So.
Yeah, and I kind of did, all of that stuff, all your programming languages, but never really interested me. Even became an Oracle DBA, but I never did it for a living. I just didn't, I did more on the network infrastructure security side, and but as far as dealing with security controls and dealing with the development teams, I provide a lot of tools, right? Okay, you must meet these requirements. You must do your good coding practices, code reviews. Okay, we need some tools. Here's your DAST and SAS tools, and this is what you're going to do, and this is the result. This is what you need to produce. To all of those types of things. But lately, I find myself, more involved with like the DevOps stuff, and it's a lot more hands-on and involved in the process. So it's, no matter how long you've been around, you learn new things, and I enjoy it. But yeah, it can be a challenge at times too, especially since the focus on the business is, putting stuff out there. You must always be rolling things out. And I'll tell you, when we talked about this CrowdStrike Azure thing, I was really pushing back just because I worked in a lot of those 3-letter agencies and whatnot, and it's like, for a long time, it's like, hey, I don't want to go to the cloud, didn't want to go to the cloud, didn't want to put things out of our hands. You can't control to a third party. But then it's kind of like, okay, I see the benefits of the cloud, especially dealing, if you're you're a small to mid-range business, you can't do it, or even within the government, it's like, oh, we can't do it this cheap or better, from a security standpoint than you guys can do it. And but lately I've been watching like the cost. It was like, okay, it was a cost to the benefit ratio, but then it's like, man, it's getting everything you do. It's like ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. It's becoming really pricey. And then all of a sudden I'm looking, it's like, well, let's put stuff out there, with our third-party stuff, things we really don't care too much about in the cloud, but don't give away your critical, systems. Let's keep control of that. And now so much stuff is out there. It's like, it's a little bit scary. I'm like pushing back. Okay, we want to do microservices and all of this stuff. It's like, well, what are you really doing, right? Do you have control of these environments? And then with CrowdStrike, I'm like, I just didn't trust these people, just knowing what I did. That's why I said what I said. It's like, hey, this was a planned event, right? It's like, that's kind of dangerous, right? When you've got a third party, a trusted third party, it's like, hey, we do this wonderful stuff. We do all, all your if you get the Falcon service, etc., you're having them doing the triage, and it's really great. They have got a lot of really good product and a lot of really smart people, doing analysis, making sure your environment's secure, that your endpoint protections are up to snuff on just about any and everything. But then it's like, hey, just a bad update, right? It's like brings everybody down. That's really, really dangerous.
Yeah, I just really switched over the last 5 years to the cloud. I was kind of like keep everything on prem, but AWS and Azure has so many great security guys. They got 5,000, 2,000 or 3,000 security guys that you can get at the drop of a hat. So I just kind of switched over the last couple years. So let me get my man Big Knob. What's your take on the SRE, man? I saw you in the chat. What's your take on the SRE? Was I right, wrong, in the ballpark? What's your thoughts on that?
Let me see. Mic check. Is it working?
You in there? You cloud? You clear? You clear?
Awesome. No, you called it. You called it perfect. Hopefully you're not in a low budget SRE. That was actually the last role I had at the place I was at. I mean, every day was different. I didn't know if I was coming in one day working on a Juniper switch, setting it up, or helping one of the devs work on his software scaffolding for the overnight builds, or if you're coming in and doing your normal stuff, kicking off VMs and OpenStack. And you were right. You called it. Everybody blames you, guilty till proven innocent.
Yeah, I figured that out as a DBA.
I'm getting a bad ping. It's too much latency. Just everything is your fault till you're proven innocent.
The cool thing though is, as you mature, even as an SR, you start having those tools ready. Oh, here's the latency. Here's the ping. Here's how many milliseconds. It can't be me. But everybody got in that blame game. So what I start doing is working with the teams and tell them I had their back. So they would whisper to me, be like, hey, something's going on. Can you help me? Before because if you're not cool with them, they'll run that up the chain and you get blindsided. Like,
yep.
I was like, dude, if you blindside me, it's not me. I'm running it back up the chain and you're going to feel pain. I'm just letting you know. So,
the other thing you called too is I think, sometimes I had challenges where, everybody wants to blame me for the problem. But then you also had certain people that they kind of, I don't know if this is a good term for tech, but they kind of tech-splain or mansplain kind of, technology to you. As an SRE, you got to know observability.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as you see something go wrong in observability, you got to know where to look to fix it. Hop in those logs, dig in there and fix it before it breaks, the build system or something.
Yeah. I think just chiming on that is what I was trying to get to, and I need to get back in my AWS. It should be smart enough observability. If this site is low, it should just automatically roll it to another site and just let me know it rolled over. And nobody should know, right? Depending on what database you use. So two is, if that VM's slow, right, you should automatically roll over to another VM. If you're in AWS, you got 6 data centers. It should roll over to another data center without even, anybody knowing. With your observability, you can have it take action on the things it observed, right? So that's where I was trying to get to with that site reliability. That sound cool though. I ain't never got there. I just saw it in the video. I want to be honest, but so that's where you need to try to get to though, right?
Yeah, I got a question.
What observability tools are you using within AWS?
Me, the standard ones I use, CloudTrail, CloudWatch. Then off of that, you can pivot off of their system. Then you can say, okay, if this VM is slow, it'll roll over to another one. If this database slow, if you're using DynamoDB, you can point it to another one. So I kind of use the total built-in. They have more mature ones, but I'm just an AWS guy, so I just use their current built-in tools. Like I said, I'm just currently labbing, trying to get to that next level of SR. Once again, I review a lot of stuff, so that's why I started learning it. Because I was going into sites and they're like, well, we're doing this for DR. I'm like, what shit, what is that? So that's kind of how I got into certain databases. You know, what's the encryption in there? How do you encrypt it? AWS, you can have the key or they can keep the key, right? So those things from a security perspective is kind of how I dug in and start, really understand the SRE from a paper part because I got to do compliance on it.
I had a question relating to that.
Go ahead.
So when you said you were going to these sites and then they were bringing up things that you may not have expertise in, how do you handle something like that? They're looking to you as like a subject matter expert on everything, but then they bringing up like a tool that you may not have heard of before, or like some sort of, acronym that you may not have heard of. Like, what do you do in that kind of situation? Oh, we need to fix the flop, and you need to fix that, and you don't know what exactly that is.
So I can chime in with my perspective.
Okay.
So first thing is there's always a tool that you're not going to know, always, because a new one comes out every single day, right? You just got to face it head on and ask questions and do research. That was one of the things that kind of maybe the most unhappy about new people coming on board is coming on board, looking what we have, and then not doing any additional research outside of, just coming in and doing their normal day-to-day work on something that we have. And then when they run into a problem, they come to you to help dig them out. And I'm like, hey, I told you might want to take a look at this to learn how these things work, So you always got to be in that learning mode, and some people accept that, and some people, they try to beat you over the head with it. It just depends on what type of people you work with. I never had a problem with anybody that didn't know something. I had a problem with people that didn't want to know something.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, how we handle that a lot of times is, and I work for mature companies, so this is our stack. So if you're bringing in something new, you're gonna have to have a real good reason to get it in there. And a lot of times is anything new has to come through security, right? So we have to do security. So from that point is once we see new stuff, you're like, okay, we need to get in front of it. And number two is I work for mature companies most of the time. So if you come in here, this is our stack. If you bring it in, you need to be a SME on this because we moving $1 billion, man. You just can't be bringing shit from 3 dudes in a garage, man. So from my perspective, that's kind of how we kind of got around it. And two, especially at DOD, if you brought something in, usually we had a consultant because we were moving big money around. So you just can't bring in even if the new thing was hot. So that's kind of how we got around it. You got to go to security. You got to get a security audit and a check. Then two is one thing from security is we tell them you got to have support for this. You got to pay Oracle. You got to pay a third party so we can put some tickets in if something break. So from our part, we expect you to be a SME if you pick it. But two is we're gonna have support with this company. So worst case, we can cut a check and get some help.
Yeah, I apologize. I think I misspoke on that one. You do these streams late, man. I get tired.
No, you good.
But no, I think I misspoke. One of the things that we do is we get that guy or that group or whatever the technology is, we get them. We have at least least 2 sessions with them to come in. They explain it. And we kind of do like a little round table on the technology. Are they FedRAMP? Do they support AWS, GovCloud, Azure? We go through all that stuff with them, and we kind of do a vetting to make sure. And then we always have someone that is a point person on that particular tech that kind of gets a little up to speed and can ask the more technical questions to get the answers from those guys. And then, of course, we have a manager representation that makes sure that all the support contracts are in place and all the legalese is going to be good to go. And we, like I said, we usually have a couple of meetings before we even say, yep, they seem like somebody that we can work with, and we can go to our government prime, whoever the customer is, if you are prime or you're a sub, and you can get approval for them.
Like you said, on the basis of that too, when I work for a big company, we have our whole architecture and security architecture in there, running through stuff, asking stuff. They might actually ask you to set up a proof of concept. For that, because they want to get a feel for it, check it. They want to cut on a TCP dump if you're in Linux to make sure what you said encrypted is encrypted. So they won't get you to get the Wireshark out, to make sure it's doing what it said it's doing. When I worked at a bigger company, to get something approved, it's like 3 boards you had to go through. It was crazy, man. Security was one, development, then security architecture. Then we had the enterprise architecture because it had to work within the whole enterprise of the company. Go ahead, BDB.
BBO, I wanted to bring this up. When you bring up the proof of concept, and I think it goes to, I heard one of my mentors, they were telling me about how it's not about the amount of money a company has that proves like a mature company or not. It's the processes that they have in place. And usually the smaller the company, the more unsophisticated it is.
Facts.
So,
because the reason why, real quick, BDB, I'm interrupted you, is when you bid on government contract, when you bid on state contracts, when you go into multi-million-dollar companies, like you said, they have all those things that you have to pass. So I usually help small companies get mature. I've had company guys go, we want this small company. So now, like he said, hey, we got to work on your FedRAMP paperwork because we trying to get you FedRAMP. So a lot of times we help them grow up. But you just can't, like I said, you can't be 3 guys in the garage and try to cowboy it. It's not going to work, especially when you come in DOD. They make you jump through so many hoops. And 2 is, to be honest, which is kind of bad for small companies, is you really got to have money because to do a FedRAMP document is going to be about 10 grand just to get in the door, man. To do FIPS 140-2 encryption means you got to send it to a government. That's 50 grand. So to get those type of certifications, a lot of time to do DOD work, you got to have money, man. So I always tell people you got to pay to play when you come in the big dog. I eat big, man. That's why I tell companies I do big systems, man. So
big systems.
I do big systems, man. So you got to eat. You need money. You need money to play in that game, man. So
I've been stealing that. I've been saying it all over the place.
Yeah, man. No, you were like this one. I ain't gonna call him out. One of my homies said he had an interview. He said he didn't get it because he told the company he's a blank sheet of paper. I said, you never meaning he wanted the company to mold him. I was joking. I tell him, I'm a Picasso, man. I'm ready to work, man. I'm fully formed. So yeah, I'm fully formed. But now, and I think that's what that's what GMR said. When you come into mature companies, you got to have those processes and procedures. And when you do NIST 800-53, it's 20 families you got to adhere to and be certified. So you kind of need like a small army just to do the damn paperwork.
Exactly. And that's overhead, which equates to money.
Yeah. Well, we need a small army or a PBO.
No, PBO get too old, man. He close to bed. No, go ahead. But no, those are excellent questions, though, B2B. And I think, like you said, as you get in the game, especially as you level up and get to bigger companies, that's why I tell people, go work for a big company. A lot of people's like, oh, I don't work for a big company. I'm like, yes, you do, because they're going to teach you process, procedures. They're going to teach you all those 3-letter acronyms you need to know to make FedRAMP, NIST, GLBAs, there's so many acronyms. They teach SRE. So all that stuff, you get those process and procedure. And when you take those to a little company, they need that to step into the big company realm. So I think all that plays together.
Yeah, PBO. Oh, but to finish it off about the proof of concept.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I was working with a small company, about like 12 people, and they were like, they were talking to, I had got them on with a few Google Cloud partners, and they were trying to get, like, Google was going to be paying $2,500 for them to increase their spending on Google Cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so, some cost savings for them. And then the rest is going to be like around like $8,000 for them to do like this proof of concept. The small business was like, no, we don't want no proof of concept. We can't spend no $8,000 on something like that. Right. And then that just tells the difference between like a small business and like a mature one.
The crazy part about it is when you work with big companies, like I used to work with Oracle and Salesforce. When they come in, they bring you a sales engineer and they know they're going to spend, but I ain't going to say they're going to spend. It's baked in. They usually have a site on their site that for a proof of concept. That proof of concept is already done for you to see, right? When you deal with bigger companies, Oracle's like, they already looked at your RFP or your requirement. They done spun up something similar to that anyway. So for the big company, it's already baked in. And a lot of times too, they have comparative clients that you could call that's kind of doing what you want to do.
Did the company have to pay for them to do the proof of concept, or is just they just did it on their own?
They just did it on their own. Oracle's $1 billion company, so that's just part of them doing business. We coming in with our sales engineer. We coming in with about 7 people because that's what they do, and so they got a proof of concept, database and instance already set up for you to come do whatever type of work you want to do. Right? Salesforce is the same way. When they came in, I used to do RFIs and RPs, and I had to review their work. So I became so popular with Azure, they brought a sales security engineer specifically for me because I was actually real poignant IRS questions for security. So they brought a specialty dude in there just for me because they're about making big money, right? And that's what they do. But smaller companies like, oh, no, we can't do that, right? So,
okay.
So I think there's a give and take with it. I found small companies seem to be a little more fluid in how they deal with the employees. Like I came from a small company, a little over 100 people, supported satellite contract. And these guys, they came and employees, benefits paid with HSA, with 20% of your salary as your retirement. And you can still do your 401k. That's hard for a big company to match.
That
really
is.
hard.
That is.
Yeah.
Well, I've never heard of small companies to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Aiken, I didn't get hacked. I think I was talking about a hack. I think we were talking about Snowflake. I think it wasn't me, Aiken. We were doing a root access calls, and we were going through a hack from somebody else. Mm-hmm. And Tam always talks about that from getting a 20% in your 401k or 403b or what you got. So,
it's straight 20% of whatever your salary is. And then I guess the last thing is you get a different type of experience because you're probably doing more than you should be doing.
Facts. Now, I'm going to chime in. I'm interrupting.
Good or bad.
And I tell people, go to a big company for all that. When I was at a small company, I was the DBA, the programmer, the infrastructure guy. But you do learn it. But man, I that almost gave me an ulcer, man. Because like
do it when you're young.
Yeah, facts. Because like you said, that's how you learn. But that's a brutal way to learn. But it's a lot easier now because there's so much stuff on YouTube and the web. I did that before Google, man. So I was actually looking at IBM books for technical books, man. Now you can Google it, you can look it up, and it's a lot easier to put in tickets now. So I think, and two is especially on YouTube, there's so many connections that I could reach out to people. Like, shout out, if I'm doing OpenShift, I call my homie Tam right there. She the OpenShift guru. There's some people I could call to get some help, right? Because we all right here in the old days, it was just me. It was just PBO and a couple books.
Yeah.
So
the books with the animals on the cover.
Oh,
O'Reilly.
facts, man. Yep, O'Reilly, man. So yeah, that's before you really could Google good. So
yep.
No, I think it's a lot. And two is, I think, which is good and bad, I think AWS and Azure makes it easier to do all that stuff. But I think the bad part is you get people spinning up stuff and building stuff, and they really don't know how that shit really works. You can wire some stuff up easy today. You can scale it pretty easy, but if it go left, it's gonna go left, and they have no idea of how that stuff works when you. Because I was working with a guy, Ted was gonna like this. He was spinning up stuff. Then I was like, the web server didn't start. I was like, dude, you got to go to that box. It's a Red Hat Linux. Go over there, LS, see what processes are running, and VI look at the config. He goes, what's that? I go, man. But he was spinning it all up with AWS. It had Elastic Beanstalk. It was spinning up. But if any of it broke, they didn't know how to dig into it. Kind of like what before the Biggie say, if you got tech and it goes left, how do you handle it, right? I'm going to blame it on the SRE guy. I'm going to blame it on Bitnet. Right? So,
yeah, that's what happened. Yeah.
Well, PBO, I appreciate you for having me up and answering my questions. Thank you so
good.
much, Native and Jim R. for.
Hold on, I got one thing, and I'm gonna shut it down. Of course, that's small as hell. AWS just came out with their AI practitioner at the top. That's their new cert for AI.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Before the Billions. They got data engineering new associate cert down there at the bottom. I need to probably get on that slide. In the blue at the bottom, there's the data engineering.
Mm-hmm.
The two, they have a machine learning right next to it. Then they have a machine learning specialty. So that's AWS trying to get their AI machine learning certification. So I'll probably do the AI practitioner and the machine learning associate probably. So because I need to get a better handle on understanding these services. Because B2B asked me some questions. I understood them at a high level, but I need to, as my man Bitnet said, I got to roll my sleeves up and get a little dirty up in here. So I think I'm gonna look at those two certs and add those to my cert repertoire. So
AI is a rabbit hole, man.
I know. I just want to stick my toe in it. I barely get my toe in it, man. So and two is, like I said, now is everything that comes in the door from a risk assessment and third party has AI in it.
Yep.
So I'm having a little problem. Like, okay, how are we securing it? Is it voice? Is it generative AI? Is it machine learning? Where is it saving it? Like B2B, is it just machine learning, or is you feeding your answers back to itself and you teaching yourself? Can it hallucinate? Can you poison it? Can we put guardrails on it? So those are some of the things I'm trying to get a little better at it with my knowledge from a GRC compliance perspective and a security perspective from AI. Because to be honest, I'm a little fuzzy from security architecture perspective. Anything else, I'm super comfortable with. AI, I'm kind of like,
yeah. It's so funny because I have these discussions all the time. It's like the business is just running with AI, and security and data. We're sitting here in a risk perspective is we're still struggling with the governance, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's like, dude, be careful. We're gonna make some mistakes here. So
yeah, the shout out to AWS. They have their Ignite event. They had their new term is ML Ops, machine learning operations, and how to put guardrails around and how to help you secure it from a governance standpoint. So they're putting some services and some wrappers around it, because I'm sure they're getting the same, like you said, Jim. I'm sure their clients are like, okay, this is cool. How we put some governance around it. So.
Yeah, what happens is the business drives the governance, right? And security and stuff, it's like, hey, you got to do things right. All you can really do a lot of times is advise, right? Hey, this is your pitfalls. This is what you're going to do. I don't advise that, and you make sure it's in writing, etc. But we support you. We want to support you. And then so when they hit a landmine, you can say, I told you so.
Yeah, facts.
And it's a CYA matter, you know.
Facts.
And the problem with a lot of cyber people, it's like we start rolling up policy and stuff, and we, you know, and then we start stabbing people with it. You know, the bottom line is we don't drive the business, right? It'll
No.
get you escorted out the door pretty quickly.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure that out. You're right. It's about making money. My job is try to keep them safe, but in the end, it's their risk to accept, right?
Just make sure you can't get blamed for it. You say,
Yeah.
look at this email. I told you, you accepted risk. That's what's good. That's what's great about, you know, in the DoD government is you've got somebody signing off on risk, you know, and it's not, and especially, you know, in a business, a large financial organizations, fine and dandy. When you get your small mid-tier organizations, you know, good luck with that. You know, security gets dumped on everything.
Yeah, like you said, they don't have that level of governance or sophistication or maturity. The DoD term is maturity, right? They always talk about how much CMM, what's your maturity level, and a lot of times when you're smaller, you're just not mature, and you're really not ready yet to step up your game to get in the big boys. Even though everybody wants to, but it's a hard thing to do. I used to help a lot of people on Upwork, not a lot, but a few people. They would come to me and ask me for this documentation. I'm like, you have no processes and procedures to build this documentation around. So, but that's about 2 6. Go ahead, Big Navi. I'm gonna let you give your last response before I shut it down, so PBO can get ready for Hump Day tomorrow. You want to shout out to anything to the people?
No, not really. I do appreciate you showing up, you know, every Tuesday, and it's something I'm coming to enjoy more and more, and appreciate everybody that came on and talked tonight. I was in the shadows until you called me out. But,
yeah, man. Can you gonna come up? Because I'm gonna start doing more SRE and GRC and get back to my AWS and start actually running labs and walking through stuff like fell over Route 53, fell over from one region, one data center to another. So I'm gonna start doing that from a GRC perspective. Like Jim said, get my hands dirty and talk about the governance of that, which is definitely gonna hit in the SRE because you know we gotta have somebody to blame. Shout out to y'all.
Hey, PBO,
I'm gonna work on you a Docker video and put it on my channel. I'll let you know.
That's cool. Shout out to your channel. You got a wrench. You got a wrench.
Oh yeah. I'll do that. Let me
drop your channel. I'm gonna stay up. Just drop your channel in there so people can come subscribe to you, man. Let me give you a shout out, man. Trying to help you out, man. Come on, man.
But yeah, I got to do that Docker video so you dip your toe in.
Shout out to Tam. She's Docker Wizard and Kubernetes and OpenShift. So I definitely gonna bring Tam up when I start because one of my things I need to get a hand on really before AI machine learning is containerization. The cool thing is Stig's got a bunch of checks for containers, so I can usually use that to fall back on. But my Kubernetes game is weak, so I need Tim to help me get a little stronger in my Kubernetes game. But I appreciate you. Drop your channel in there, man. I'll stay on and give you a shout out and share your video with me. And you know, I'll share it out to my audience is small, man, but I'll share it to my 3K. Give you a shout out.
Hey, PBO, can I grab the screen for about a minute?
I was going to let you. I was coming to you next, Jim, before we shut down. But you'll take it over. I can share it so people can see it.
Can you see me? Here we go.
There you go.
It's just something I'm working on. I just want to bring this up just for everyone's knowledge. ISAC is bringing out a new certification. It probably won't be available till 2025. And I was actually they've got a beta study guide, and I'm kind of like the beta student and doing a beta exam, etc. So you won't see it out there, but it'll be out here. But let me show you what it is real quick. Resources. You can't even find it. It's not on the site. Okay. But this is the guy right here. It's called the CCOA. Okay. I don't even know what that means. It's basically an operations analyst, so security ops, right?
Okay.
So I gotta take this exam here in September, and it's not bad. You know, I equate it. It's probably like the CompTIA CISA.
Okay. Yeah.
But probably a little different focus, and it's got some IA and machine learning concepts thrown in here too. So it's not too bad. So I'm kind of going through I'm muddling my way through it now, as well as you know. So that's just another thing. It's one of the 900 certifications out there, right?
Yeah.
And then you get to the point, and it's like, what exactly do I need and what I don't need, you know? So I haven't been through this enough to let you know if it's going to be worth it or not.
You can let us know. Like I said, I'm trying to hopefully step for the CISP next, but I've been just struggling on this. Go check out my man Big Native. Go check his channel out. Everybody showing some love at Work From Home Tech. Doing big things. Definitely gonna have him come up more. Like I said, we're gonna do some more AWS with GRC combined. Hopefully, Tim gonna bless us and give us some Kubernetes knowledge.
And you're gonna make me read that AWS book, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I got to get better at AWS because most now the company I work for, they do both. So yeah. I think multi-cloud is the future. So I'm like, hell, I got to get decent at one before I learn the other one. So I'm hoping to get AWS, and I'm gonna start picking up some Azure.
I get a good friend who's an architect in the Google Cloud. Boy, he does a lot. And it's like, so far, it's like there's been Azure and AWS, and I really haven't gotten into Google Cloud too much.
Yeah, Google for me, we had one vendor that was using Google Cloud, and they didn't do well in the RFP, so that's why I haven't got there. They put a lot of money into one of my. I interviewed him on my channel. I interviewed Google security architect. He used to work for a $1 billion database company. That's how we met before he went to Google. So he keeps trying to get me to switch over. I probably interview him again. Super, super bright guy. Like I said, he was bringing Oracle into the state when I was reviewing it. They have their appliance, so we were kind of going at it. So that's kind of where I met him. So he's at Google now doing great things. And I always give him a shout out on LinkedIn. It's one of those. So, but you got anything else, Jim? I'm going to shut it on down. I was going to give you your last couple plies. Thanks again for coming up, Bit Native. Come up some more, man. I had to call you out. You should just be jumping up here, man, dropping that knowledge, man.
Hey, can I ask Jim a question real quick?
Yeah.
Hey, how do you feel about those exams in beta?
Well, you know, it's funny because there's not a lot of material on them, but for me, if you don't have it, it's great. It's only $50, right? And if you pass it, you're fully fully certified. And what I found is, at least the exams that I've taken in beta, it's they're very, very similar. If you get the the current exam study guide, and then they'll give you an outline, and good luck trying to find material. But actually, it's not bad, because a lot of the stuff you go to, like with your CISSP, or you can go to other materials, and usually you can get a lot of the study resources. But I found they're pretty good. They're just not real clear, and they throw some questions in there they're not going to use, just to kind of get a baseline. And so a lot of people come out of there, like when I took the Cloud Plus. I said, I got a study guide sitting over here. I'll go through it, and I did it. And I was doing the CCSP at the same time. And when I went to the Cloud Plus, it's like, hey, this wasn't in a book, right? Or this wasn't even really clearly covered by the exam outline, right? But thankfully, I was studying for the CCSP, which covered a lot of probably there was an overlap of 50 to 60% of the material. Or even if you're doing like something like the CCSK, it's got a lot of those concepts in there. So I think there was probably like 3 or 4 additional questions I could answer, right? Just because I was studying for both tracks. So they take that into account. You got to wait 6 months to find out the results, like I did. That's the bad part. If you need it, it's like, well, too bad, you're not going to get it. So it's a trade-off: $50 exam versus waiting 6 months. So I thought it was. I like them. I don't know if other people do, but I definitely like them because I'm a cheapskate.
I said never again when I took. I think the Linux Professional Institute, they were brand new.
Yeah.
And they had their very first certification, and it was part 2, the LPI. I took it in beta, and man, that test was brutal.
Was
I
it
got
that hard?
through it.
Did they
Huh?
not cover the objectives clearly? That's the problem, right? It's like, it's like if you know what it's going to be, the material, and roughly kind of how they're going to ask, what the questions are, the distractors, etc., you can study for it, right? But when you go in there and it's like, man, they didn't cover this stuff, they didn't tell me I was going to, have to ask or answer questions on scripting and things like that. So there were some of those, I noticed some of the other people that took it, said, I didn't know I needed to know this material and that level of detail,
It was back in the dial-up internet days too, so that didn't help me.
No,
Yeah.
facts.
Yeah.
But
No, I
if you get
appreciate it.
if you want to do the CompTIA, if you get a beta opportunity, if you see it when you go to schedule exam, you just go out there and just look for a beta. $50. It's pretty. It's a done deal to me, and instead of paying like 300, 350.
Agree with that. Yeah.
Well,
Agree with that.
I'm gonna shut it down, fellas. I want to thank y'all for joining me tonight. It's always a great session. So my goal is to show up every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Shout out to Chris Whitlock. He said it's too late. Sometimes I don't know where I picked this time up. I think I was trying to stay away from the big YouTubers. He goes, "What big YouTubers?" I don't know. I just gotta make that up. So I gotta pick this time, my time. So I want to thank both of y'all for coming up. Go check out my man. Let me hit him again. Go subscribe to my man. Let's get him up there. Let's get him to monetization so he gets some barbecue fun like me. Get him some tips. How many subs you got?
I think I'm like 440 something.
Oh yeah, you just getting in the game good.
I'm just small potatoes, man.
Yeah, we're gonna get you up. We're gonna get you up there, man. Go subscribe to my man so we can get him some monetization. But you gotta start going. You gotta start going live, man, so we can get your hours up in the background.
Yeah, next week you'll be 440K.
He'd be bigger than me then. Shout out to him. I want everybody. I appreciate it. I'm shutting it down. Everybody have a good night. I'm out of here. Let's keep these cybersecurity streets safe. I'm out. Thanks for joining me, fellas.
Later.